Let me tell you, you never really know when your whole world is going to flip on its head, right? Some people get a warning, a call, a chill in the air, but sometimes you just walk through your own front door and it's like you've entered someone else's nightmare. Yeah, that's exactly what happened to Desmond Carter, and to this day, I can still feel the echo of that moment. One of those stories that shakes you so hard, you never look at family the same way again. He wasn't supposed to be there, you know? Desmond had planned to be a continent away, chasing business and trying to quiet the grief in his chest by keeping busy in some hotel in Dubai. But something, call it father's intuition, call it fate, pulled him onto a plane without telling a soul. He wanted to surprise his daughter, little Ava, just 5 years old, the light of his life after her mom passed. So he tiptoed into his own mansion, marble floors shining, the smell of lemon polish in the air, a pink teddy bear in one hand and that briefcase in the other, hoping to sneak up behind her and see her eyes light up, just for him. But what he saw instead, I'm telling you, it would freeze anyone in their tracks. There, by the velvet couch, stood Mrs. Greta, tall, sharp as a hawk, with her crisp black and white uniform, and in her arms was Ava, limp, her little face buried, not making a sound, her cheek bruised purple, one eye swollen shut, her lips split open, one hand hanging limp like she was made of porcelain and someone had just dropped her. The world just stopped, you know what I mean? Desmond's breath got yanked out of him, his mind racing, his hands trembling, that briefcase clattering to the floor so loud it sounded like thunder. But Greta just stared, stone-faced, and said, flat as can be, she fell again. Like it was no big deal, as if this was a daily routine. Can you believe that? Not a hint of worry, not a drop of guilt. He charged over, his heart pounding, pretty much knocking Greta aside. Scooped Ava into his arms and felt her wince, every little flinch of her ribs making him want to scream, and she just whimpered, this soft, broken sound that would haunt you forever, baby girl. What happened? He whispered, and she didn't answer, just pressed her face into his chest, silent except for those tiny, shivering breaths. Desmond's hands shook as he dialed 911, choking out the words, my daughter, 5 years old, she's hurt, she's bleeding, send help now. And when the paramedics stormed in minutes later, they peeled her gently from his arms, their faces tightening as they took in the bruises. One of them even pulled him aside, real low, and said, sir, these don't look like an accident. And Desmond, he just stared at Greta, all the blood draining from his face. You were supposed to protect her, he said, his voice shaking, but Greta just shrugged, arms crossed, cold as winter. She screams when she doesn't get her way. I disciplined her. She needed structure. You left a child with no rules and too many dolls. I gave her what you wouldn't. I mean, what kind of person even says that, right? The cop stepped in, told Desmond to let them handle her, and they took Greta away, her face still twisted in that same smug, empty scowl. All Desmond could do was sit on the edge of the couch, his expensive white suit stained with his own daughter's blood, his head in his hands, replaying every conversation he'd had with Ava lately. How quiet she'd been, how her laughter was missing from their calls, and suddenly all the little moments he'd brushed off, the bruises, the nightmares, the silence, they weren't just symptoms of grief. They were warning signs, and he'd missed them. You ever get hit with guilt so heavy you can't breathe? That was him, right there. Ava had tried to tell him, weeks ago, showing a bruise on her knee, whispering, Greta said I'm not fast enough, but he'd laughed it off, too busy, too trusting, thinking it was just playtime gone rough, never for a second thinking that someone he'd hired, someone with perfect references, could be the monster in the room. As the ambulance lights flickered outside, Desmond promised his daughter right then and there, this would never happen again. She squeezed his hand as they wheeled her away, barely whispering, hurts, and he just broke inside, holding her tiny fingers and swearing he'd never let go. The hospital was its own kind of hell. You know, with that bleach smell and endless beeping. Desmond hunched beside Ava's bed all night, his hands shaking, her face covered in bruises and bandages, for lines snaking from her arms. The doctors confirming what he already knew but couldn't say out loud. 2 fractured ribs, a dislocated shoulder, older bruises hidden beneath her skin. No way this was just one fall. No way any of this was an accident. Greta was arrested, yeah, But Desmond wasn't satisfied. He hired a private investigator, got his lawyers on the phone, demanded every scrap of information on Greta, and what they uncovered made his blood run cold. Turns out, there were other families, other children, all with stories swept under the rug, bruises and secrets, complaints that never stuck. Parents too scared or ashamed to go public, and he realized, with a sickening lurch, that he'd almost let Ava become another forgotten name in a long, ugly list. Here's the twist, right? One mom, voice shaking on the phone, confessed Greta had once locked her son in a pantry because he refused to eat, but they fired her quietly, never reported it. "We just wanted to move on," she said, as if moving on erased the scars. 7 families, 7 silent wounds. Desmond realized the true horror wasn't just Greta's violence, but the world's willingness to look away. Courtroom day, Greta in handcuffs, her hair wild, no remorse, no apology. Desmond stood up, looked the judge dead in the eye, and said, "She wasn't just my employee, I trusted her with my daughter's life, my home, my peace of mind. I missed the signs, I own that. But my daughter, she's stronger than anyone who tried to break her." Then, turning to Greta, his voice low and cold, "You picked a child who'd already lost her mother. You thought nobody would listen, but you didn't count on me coming home early, or karma coming for you. Now you face both." The court gave Greta 12 years, no parole, and started digging up her old cases, but Desmond didn't feel like celebrating. He just sat there breathing for the first time in days, thinking about all the ways he'd failed to protect his daughter, all the money and power in the world, and none of it had mattered. Only a tiny, bruised voice had. Back home, everything felt wrong. The mansion too big, toys untouched, Ava's drawings taped to the fridge next to that stupid sticker chart Greta used as a weapon. But something changed in Desmond that day. He poured his money into something real, founding the Ava Carter Trust, a program to vet, surprise check, and support families with background checks and anonymous reporting for domestic workers, so no other parent would have to wonder or regret the way he did. He pushed for new laws, called every politician he knew, made sure no one could ever say, "We just didn't know." And most importantly, he started to really listen to Ava, to every small voice, every story. Reading with her at night, making pancakes in the morning, letting her choose the music and the books, building a new world, one moment at a time. One afternoon, not long after, Ava handed him a crayon, purple, her favorite, and asked, "Draw me, Daddy, but happy this time." And Desmond's heart cracked open for the first time in months, not from pain, but hope. The kind that says maybe healing is possible, even after the worst kind of storm. That's what gets me, you know? Greta took her voice for a while, but she never got her spirit. Desmond made a promise, right there, that nobody would ever hurt his daughter again. And if they tried, the world would know, the world would hear about it. So here's my question to you. What would you have done? Would you have seen the signs or looked away? Do you believe justice is really possible in cases like this? Or is the system always one step behind? Tell me in the comments. Where do you stand on trust, second chances, and the cost of silence? Smash that like button if you want more stories that make you feel something. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next one might just change the way you see everything. Stay kind, stay awake, and don't ever be afraid to listen, even to the smallest voices.